We are back on the Exit 52 podcast. It is Sunday night. This is your instant analysis for December 10th. My name is Jake Luke. I'm joined by Brian. I'm joined by a very drunk Spencer Schultz. What a win, gentlemen. What a gosh darn win at M&T Bank Stadium today. Our correspondent who was on the ground, your levels of sobriety, I think, are in question right now, but I'm sure you can remember at least enough of what was going on there. First thought of the day, Spen.
I will start this by saying that, and I might honestly cry again at some point during this podcast. Tylan Wallace made me cry. I get goosebumps immediately. Jake, you are the biggest of Tylan Wallace guys. He's faded into the back a little bit. And for Devin Duvernay to go down, Devin Duvernay, no disrespect, has not had the strongest year, especially considering what he's done the last couple of years here. But for Devin Duvernay to go down, which is a little bit of a tongue twister, and for Tylan Wallace to step up in that moment, and that's what will be remembered. And I'll just start us out with two things. Lamar Jackson, 3rd and 17. If you go back and watch that, I'm going to come back to Tylan Wallace, but if you go back and watch that throw was a fucking laser. That was a nuke. That was a kill streak. That was 10 plus. That was undefendable. That was a laser beam. 3rd and 17 after a penalty. All of the ref show that happened here today, exactly as Jacobs gives air quotes, all of the ref show that happened today. Lamar Jackson dropped back and threw a heat-seeking missile. Then the game goes overtime to oversimplify. And to go back and watch that Tylan Wallace play, I'm like kind of bragging right now in a weird way. To watch that in person, to watch what Tylan Wallace did in person, to spin out of first contact and walk up that sideline like a man that didn't have consequences, like a man that had no fear, had no repercussions, walking in for Devin Duvernay. How many punt returns does Tylan Wallace have in the NFL? 3. What was his 3rd? Maybe his 4th. For him to do that in overtime with, it's easy to be conservative. It's easy to feel hot breath on yourself. Of fair catch, of go out of bounds, of just take care of the football. And to go make a play as a guy who, if you go watch what the Ravens posted, go make a play as a guy who has torn his ACL. His twin brother, Jake, we've talked about this 1,000 times. His twin brother has torn both of his knees. To go make that play at that time is something that will be seared into my 85-year-old brain. And won't make it that long. We've talked about that. But that is something that will be seared into my brain as a Ravens fan. You know what it reminded me of was, I'm going to pass it off after this. It reminded me of Anthony Wright and Marcus Robinson. DeMarcus Robinson's, I believe, cousin.
Uncle, I think.
Uncle, somewhere in there. It reminded me of that game. That's a game that, hey, if the Ravens lost that game and we're sitting at, 9-4 now, it's all right. It's okay, right? But for him to make that one single play after how that game went is something I'll remember for the rest of my life. It was, what the fuck do we watch this sport for? Why do we care? Why is there people that think about art or people that think about film or people that think about crafts they do? That play meant so much to me as a football fan that I can't put into words. And afterwards, to see a guy like Tylan Wallace, it brings me into tears. I might cry again. I'm not even trying to be dramatic. But after the game, he sits down on the bench. He gets interviewed. He, has the whole world is on Tylan Wallace for one split second. And that one split second was beautiful. And you see him sit down and look around, and he sat down alone after everything in that stadium and took it in and soaked it in like he should. And that is the beauty. That is why Taylor, Brian, Jake, myself, that is why we love this sport. That is why little kids love this sport. That is why fathers love this sport to sons. It was the most beautiful thing I have seen in professional football as a Ravens fan in quite some time. It made me feel rejuvenated as a football fan. And there's nothing you can tell me other than this sport is fucking beautiful.
Yeah, it's Billy Bean sitting in Oko. You know, how can you not be romantic about baseball, right? That whole story is about him breaking things down to the numbers and forgetting that these guys are human in some ways. And really, Tylan Wallace, I mean, you make all the good points there. Injuries, you know, his brother had all the injuries and stuff. Basically, had to quit on football. He gets his mom a car for the first time. Kind of fulfills a promise. I think it was either this week or last. Really cool kind of way to bring this whole story full circle. In that he has a penalty earlier in the game as well, where he's offsides, and you know it's a 4th and 5 for the Rams. They get.
I will say that was not him; it was whoever the left sweeper was, and that penalty is something we'll come back to. But it was credited to him, and he took that off his name.
Yeah, no, yeah, and whatever it was, the Rams get a fresh set of downs from that. They drive down for a touchdown. I'm angry. I think everyone's angry. I'm, you know, maybe saying some things about Chris Horton that I'm probably going to be ready to walk back to a certain extent, but. Yeah, man, that's it's what it's all about, and you really can't say much to really put it all into words. I mean, it's just exactly why we watch sports. And I feel like I've been saying this a lot the last couple of years. Just one of the most amazing, incredible wins in M&T Bank history, I think, and that goes back to the Lamar Jackson effect. That goes into the John Harbaugh effect that we've talked about, Spenny, with it being a close game pretty much every time, or at the very least, he's going to keep these games competitive. When they could get away from him. He had some blunders today, which we'll also get into. But Brian and Taylor, will get to you. He joined in for the podcast listeners. But Brian, we watched this one from the comfort of our own homes today. I know you were pretty fired up. You put a video out there, very entertaining. How do you put this into words?
Very fired up. That was a game where one of the rarer games where the Ravens just didn't really feel like they had control of it. It was the Rams were totally dictating the pace and control the football the first half. Righted the ship there early in the second half, especially defensively. But then we made one of those blunders with the snap with Linderbaum, where it's like, oh shit, it's just going to be one of these games, and it just felt like it was going to go back and forth and back and forth. And 9 lead changes? Is that what the stat was by the end of it? It's nuts. And we've seen it's like the Minnesota snow game. It's like, who's just going to have the ball last, or who's going to make that big play that just steals the game? And we've been on the right side and the wrong side of that a lot of times. And man, like, I feel like obviously Lamar has a bajillion highlight plays that are very memorable and committed to memory, but he doesn't have that many like inside 2-minute just like fuck you plays. I mean, the last real big one was probably that throw he made in Detroit to set up the JT field goal last year.
Sometimes when he does too, he gets let down on
that one. But
yeah, sometimes when he does, he gets let down, like the Pittsburgh.
Yeah, exactly. So I was just so hopeful because that was such a fuck you throw. Like, fuck that sack call, the incomplete pass nonsense. Like, fuck that. I'm gonna go play the game and go win this thing. He did that, and then honestly, the 2-point conversion was sick too.
Yeah, that was even better. Honestly,
that was just like some serious alpha. I'm the man in this building energy from him, and I wanted that to be what ultimately was the story of the game. And somehow it was one-upped in a way that's like even more, I don't know, empowering, or it's just a great story. I mean, Tylan Wallace just
we have the comment. We have the comment from Alex Rada. It feels like it's been a while since there was a magic moment.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like the Oway strip against the Chiefs.
The
Like,
Colts, they played the Colts and the Vikings. They had a
Yeah.
couple comebacks, but this just felt a little bit more substantial and hearty and full of protein. It felt like sustenance for a Ravens fan to watch them not panic. And this is also what has been the nature of this Ravens team. What is the national statistic? Oh, the Ravens have led by so much, but can Lamar come from behind? This was the first game it's been like that in a while. And to your point, Brian, they just snap right back into calls, everything. So didn't want to cut you off, but
exactly right.
They just fell into that rhythm.
Yeah, to your Tylan Wallace, man, scratch and claw his way to just stay on the roster for the last better part of a year and change. I mean, like, so many guys have come and gone through Baltimore that were drafted in his type of circumstances. What was he, a 4th rounder? Something of that sort? Like, right, yeah. And we've had so many guys come in that are like, okay, kind of impressive tape coming out of college. Maybe he's a guy who blossoms and could be a factor for us. Maybe not. And we've had so many of those guys just wash out, which is the way it goes with picks at that point in the draft. But he did the thing that you just kind of preach to players in those types of positions, like, hey, just latch on as a special teams guy. Just volunteer to be the great guy in the locker room. Like, do all the extra little things. I mean, is testimony the right word? All of the great, like Justin Tucker, all these guys that are out here just saying amazing things about Tylan Wallace. It's not like he was perceived to be anything different before this, but you could just feed off the energy from everybody else who are just so happy for this guy to have his moment. Like, 53 guys on a roster. There's, practice squad guys, a lot of characters that are in a building any given day. And I don't know, 4 or 5 of them really get moments throughout an entire year. And for him to get to be one of those guys at the end of the day, get the game ball, get the showers, get the interviews, like all that good stuff, it's just awesome. Like, to Spenny's point, it's just, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to cry here, but
your cup's full.
He's making me, yeah.
Yeah, it's the type of thing that you're just not privy to as a fan at all, right? Like, you watch the team from the outside and you see all the videos, you watch the press conferences, and really what you're getting is a very vertical slice of these teams. And really it's a living, breathing thing with, people at the bottom of a roster that make just as much of a difference as some of these guys at the top of them. Maybe not always to the extent that a Lamar Jackson would, but he's just one of those pistons pumping at the end of the roster that's keeping this thing rolling. And to get a moment like this, and we've talked about all the adversity ad nauseum, but it is awesome to see. Taylor, your thoughts after this one.
Yeah, hard to follow Spenny's
soliloquy
that he went on there at the end. That was beautiful stuff. No, I think, to be honest, we talk about this week to week, like in a world where I feel like the quality of playing the NFL week to week is we talk about is kind of low. That's one of the best games in the league this year so far. It was awesome. It had everything. You have to give a lot of credit to the Rams. I mean, they were great, really, in all facets of the game.
Taylor, to add on to your point, the touchdown to Kupp, Matt Stafford let go of that ball 4 steps before Kupp made his break.
That ball touched the atmosphere. Like, it was a rainbow.
It was what were they on the 4? Kupp was not even – Kupp didn't even hit his head fake yet. Unbelievable. Keep going, Taylor.
Yeah, no, you're good. You led me right into it. I think Jake tweeted, like, you always forget, but Matt Stafford just, like, never goes away. And he just never goes away.
That playoff game in Tampa Bay, I was thinking of that. Like, the guy just fucking keeps shipping and shipping and shipping. He's so tough. He just makes all the throws. It's insane.
And I think and that makes that even more, it would have been nice to have come off the bye and just ran past that team. But for the Ravens to win the game that way, to get past a team that has clearly found something. I mean, the Rams are, clearly better than their record. They found something over the past few weeks. Stafford's playing great. They have cut back. Obviously, they have some talent defensively. That was just an excellent NFL football game. And that was one of the biggest parts of it that I enjoyed. Obviously, you guys have covered the Tylan Wallace moment ad nauseum. It's funny. I was sitting there watching it with my roommate, and I said, I just hope he doesn't drop it. Because as Spenny said, it's like you're the backup punt returner. You're just trying in a wet, nasty sort of where we saw the Rams punt returner drop it twice. Like, I was just like, I think he's going to drop it. Like, this is a tough moment, whatever. And then to take it all the way back after that is pretty amazing. No, I agree with what all of you guys said.
The chutzpah that it took, the chutzpah to be able to rock that, and that spin and go upfield was like surreal. It was a surreal moment.
Kept his feet too. I got his shoestrings.
To stay on his feet and not go down. I mean, and even if he goes down there, it's a huge play. I mean, you get 10 or 15 yards, you kick a field goal, you win.
And even on top of it, in that surreal moment of someone who, not to knock what he's done on special teams, whatever, but hits that little side flip on top of it. Like, he put the sauce on top of the sauce.
That was a Steve Smith-esque flourish there at the end. That was good to see. But yeah, man, I mean, it was amazing, and I mean, absolutely awesome. But I'm glad we touched on Stafford there, because that kind of really the B, but it really should be kind of the 1A storyline here. Lamar Jackson. I mean, and talking about Stafford and all the respect that I have for him, he's gone and had his moment. He has done this in the playoffs. He's done this in the Super Bowl, and we saw him do it again today. And I was tweeting, like, I kind of felt like J. Robert Oppenheimer sitting there naked, like this, just kind of psychoanalyzing the team a little bit. And I was like, we need this offense to, like, have a moment here. Like, no matter what happens on the other side of this drive, They've got to go down the field and fucking have a moment. And Lamar Jackson, 3rd and 17, we've already hit on it, but amazing to drop back, just keep his eyes downfield, no panic. That's what we've talked about. We got to get rid of the panic. We've got to get rid of the frantic nature of some of these drives. And really, it was 2 drives. I mean, it was the one before that, and then that one that ended in the touchdown. And 3rd and 17, Nelson Aguilar clearly trying to trail the lead defender away. Succeeds to perfection. You know, Zay Flowers, we're going to have to talk about him too. Amazing catch in the end zone there, falls backwards, and great celebration too. Not going to get clowned on for that celebration. And then the 2-point conversion really wound up being a game-saving 2-point conversion because they go right down for the field goal. He gets absolutely sawed in half. I'm not sure who it was. His arm is like this, and he just puts it to Flowers, who gets both feet down. I mean, that was just like
he also made a quick cut to like give himself any space to even make the throw.
Yeah, it was a rollout, and the rollout was not there at all. So he was like, all right, let me just, shuffle up here real quick twitch, and just flicked it to him. I'm sure that was crazy to see in person.
The Lamar game, some of it epitomizes Lamar, where there was a certain point in the game where I thought, oh my God, we're going to come on this instant analysis and talk about how he like can't hit a deep ball, like he's underthrowing it, and there's some loose stuff, and then it's like the Jekyll and Hyde of Lamar, and and instead he, at the end it's at the end of the day it's what everybody remembers is what happened at the end of the game. He was fantastic. I mean, that drive to tie the game, to take the lead, was fantastic. The 2-point conversion was fantastic. He's a great player, and I think that he's frustrating because of how good it can look at the highest point. So it's like when the throws are not as good, you're like, oh my God. I mean, how could he possibly not do this? Because you see him do so many ridiculous things. Aaron Donald had him dead to rights at one point, and when you talk about Zay Flowers, he had 2 drops on plays that Lamar had no business even getting the ball to him. Redeems himself at the end of the game, catches the touchdown pass. But some of the plays he's able to make so it's not negative plays, just to prevent negative plays, are ridiculous. Yeah. So
Aaron Donald didn't touch him today. He got blanked on the stat sheet there, and they were double and triple teaming him a lot, but crazy.
He's actually never sacked Lamar Jackson.
Oh, they didn't mention that. They did not mention that.
Oh, I wasn't really paying that much attention, but if they did. Spenny, what was that drive like to watch in the stadium? I was getting a little frustrated with some of the time.
Spenny, did you actually take your clothes off? Is that a real photo?
No, it's photoshopped.
No, that was photo.
He usually just does.
Never gotten naked at M&T Bank Stadium before.
He usually just does the shirt, but this warranted more.
My God, I hope that people paid more for that.
The first, and I'm very big on this very stupid fan. I don't think it's fan, but it sounds fan. You can tell when Lamar has it, and you can tell when he doesn't. And I think a lot of times, pardon me, it has to do with, does he have protection or not? If he trusts protection, I think he has great games, and I think he's the best. I think you can't be better than him. If he doesn't, that's when you end up in these weird games. And my mom's not happy. My mom's not too happy here. But early on,
a preview for the Patreon. That's what goes on behind the paywall.
Yeah.
Early on. So my vantage point was I think it was the Ravens' second drive of the game. Lamar threw, and him and Odell Beckham had this twice, and one of them was on the long touchdown that Odell Beckham had, was that Odell looked inside and the ball went outside both times. And Odell, after the game, says, oh, that was my fault. That was my fault. Who knows? It could have been either. It could have been this. It could have been that. Football at that level is if then. But early on, Lamar threw a whistler, like a Vancouver freaking top mountain double black diamond whistler to Odell, looked inside, came outside, extended his arm, snagged that ball down. And when I saw that, I was like, Lamar is throwing heat. There is heat that is being produced on this field. And from that point forward, it felt like he was faster. He was better. And what we talked about in the preview, Jake, was that Aaron Donald was getting triple teamed at times. Aaron Donald did have Lamar Jackson dead to rights. The Rams defense, I think, did step up to the task, but they lacked dudes. There wasn't a middle linebacker. There wasn't a safety. There wasn't a Jalen Ramsey. There wasn't a Von Miller that was like, oh, we're going to force the Ravens into a shell of themselves into one side of the field away from a player. And that's why I think this Rams team is very impressive, because they don't have that,
Yep.
but are still where they are.
Yeah, like
So-
Bobby Brown was like all over him. He was the only guy that was getting consistent kind of rush, and I hadn't even really like known much about him before this game.
Exactly.
Even just the amount of times they had Lamar just running around the backfield, and they just didn't have the athletes back there, besides Donald, who's getting triple teamed and stuff, things like that, to make those placements. I think that summed up really well. It's like they were in a lot of the right spots at times and just couldn't actually make the plays.
And they made mistakes early. And I think this game really was when you go back, I think this was a very obscure first half with penalties and strange situations and decisions that had to be made so early. And the Rams, just regardless of where the coin fell, one edge or the other, stayed even keel. And I thought Matthew Stafford had a fucking hell of a day. I thought Matthew Stafford was awesome. He got hit. His jersey was muddied, and he hung in there. And the catch that Puka Nacua made at one point in this game to get into Ravens territory, I mean, the amount of plays in this game that were like memorable, it gives me I have goosebumps on my forearm. The amount of plays in this game that was someone performing above even the average level of a professional. Puka Nacua diving, Lamar Jackson's 3rd and long throw, Zay Flowers' fingertip catch on 3rd and 8 above, and then to take contact, wrap with it, momentum, and turn upfield. There were special plays that were made. And of course, we already talked about Tylan Wallace, but special plays that guys made on both sides of the football in this game, penalties, defensive pass interference, Marlon Humphrey getting beat, but still, Stafford not being able to. So many plays that stand out in this game. This was not, I didn't watch the Joe Flacco game today, but I imagine that game was not quite as entertaining to watch from start to finish as what today was. But such an entertaining game to watch, and to see the Rams at a point, at a crux. If the Rams won that game, they are in the playoffs, in my opinion. They are in a prime spot. You got a fighting, clawing team in bad weather. And, man, Lamar Jackson, we had a comment earlier somewhere in here, but made the mistake, underthrew Bateman at one point, throws a pick, basically gives the Rams an opportunity to go back-to-back possessions up against the half. And to get out of that, to get out from under that is like, I've been playing a lot of chess. It's like you got pinned pieces and there's only one move to make, and they fucking made it. And Lamar Jackson was a huge reason why. So I couldn't be more impressed from a theatrical standpoint and entertainment value, a schematic point, or from just simply their quarterback today. I thought this was one of the most fun games, Jake. I mean, we've been doing this. I guess this is year 5 for us. I don't know if I can think of a game that made me a little bit more dilated in my pupils and a little bit more sweaty and a little bit more fun to talk about after. I'm fucking fired up to talk about this one.
It's a great pace game. Great pace in the living room game.
Great pace to living room game. I had the 60-degree out, just trying to relieve some of that upper body tension, get some hacks in, which I usually do, as I tweeted, when I get nervous in late games. But it just felt really crisp to me. Like we talked about that Vikings game a couple years ago that went to overtime. A lot of interceptions and like just frantic kind of shit going on. And some of it, like even that Chiefs game, which was awesome. I mean, he threw 2 picks early in that one. Colts game, it was kind of a similar story. This just felt like 2 heavyweights just duking it out, just 15 rounds. Sonny Liston, Muhammad Ali type shit. And, I know the Rams record doesn't totally reflect that. And I usually am your record set.
They're in a very tough division.
Yeah. Yeah. And they've weathered a lot of storms, and this might've been it for them today, which I think would be unfortunate because they're a fun team, a good story. McVay is always going to have them competitive. Stafford, like I said, got my respect, no doubt. But yeah, I mean, it felt like an absolute heavyweight fight today. And you talk about like playing in games like that and coming through and helping you in terms of preparing mentally for the playoffs. I mean, that's freaking huge. They needed to win a game like this with the home stretch that they're going to have to go through here. And then eventually in January, you're going to be in games like this, hopefully not quite to this extent, but it's going to be hard. The level of competition gets raised, and you've got to be able to step up and make plays. And they did that, and it's going to be a big boon to their confidence today. Brian, what do you think of the receivers today? Because Bateman, he had a couple tough moments, but other than that, Beckham looked awesome. Likely a couple nice plays. He had the long touchdown, obviously. What'd you think overall?
I mean, overall pretty good. I think those adjustments that Beckham made on those, we touched on that. Just awesome adjustments to the ball in the air.
This is Willie Mays Hayes. That's what I was saying earlier.
Yeah. I mean, Zay Flowers obviously had a couple moments there where he took his eye off the ball and tried to make plays, before it got there, which we saw the benefit of that in a big way. That drop by Nakua. Did they replay that in the stadium, Spen?
Oh yeah.
His head was all the way turned around already by the time the ball got there. Like his hands closed and a little hit off the back of his hands. What the worst, didn't see it in, was already trying to make a move.
Rams had a couple of those.
But it's of course you want Zay to clean that up.
In that Aaron Donald had one stat today pass deflection. It was off his helmet. So just wanted
I'll also say that Manny Manstromala I can't even say his name. He's one of my good buddies. Manny is a very nice stroke of the mid irons there. Manny, I love you.
One of your good friends can't even say his last name.
I can't say his name. I have it saved in my phone, Rob.
Okay. Spenny, receiver thoughts?
It felt like the receivers today were up to the challenge in terms of intensity. It felt like there was a confidence and chutzpah to throw themselves into the fire. And I think that surmised with, I think Odell Beckham, and so many people want to talk, oh, was it worth it? Was it worth it? Was it worth it? Today is why it's worth it. Isolated in one game, because you see on your own team one player that made themselves go above and beyond average. Odell Beckham easily could have had an average day, easily could have not made a play early in the game, easily could have not made a couple catches, and just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And it comes into a confidence where Zay Flowers makes plays late. And there was, a 3rd and 8 where he ends up getting tackled before the line to gain. I don't think the ball got there. It was 3rd and 7.5 where he had the ball, and he ends up 14 yards downfield. The defender had him, wrapped him up. He turned, he got body control. He sunk his pads, played behind his pads, and got upfield in an aggressive, confident way. And we have not seen that in the Lamar Jackson Ravens. Marquise Brown had his moments, Demarcus Robinson, who had a couple catches in this game, had his moments, a Seth Roberts, a Michael Crabtree a few years ago. There has not been a level of confidence that we are playmakers. We make plays, we win games. We are the shit. You're going to see it. We're going to see it right now. And Odell Beckham did that again for the 3rd straight game. And I think that just puts something in your head of, we are a playmaking group. My group makes plays. I can fall into that. It's simple sounding. I think that, it's rudimentary, but they did. Bateman made a couple tough catches. And even after, and it ties back to Lamar, but it's even after the Rams, I believe, scored a touchdown, Lamar Jackson throws a deep pick, underthrows Bateman, who I think it was an underthrown ball. I think it was not a good ball. I think Bateman should have fought harder for it. I think that's duality of two wrongs. And the Rams defender goes and fingertips it and makes a pick and then, turns that game around. But to respond, to come back, to not let that deflate you, to keep pushing and pressing from behind was as encouraging as you can see. Because what are people going to say? And what is the thought that creeps in your head? Oh, the Ravens have led every game, all game. And sometimes they blow games. Oh, well, can they win from behind? Oh, well, can they, what happens when they're down? Oh, well, what, those things can creep in to thought, process, mind as a coach, as a player, as all those things. So to expel that and then expound it like a Hame Kamesa, Dragon Ball Z, to explode out of it the way that they ultimately did time and time again was just sex on ice. It was pure football beauty. And man, I loved it.
Great ass.
Taylor, thoughts on this receiving core today? I think it was, it's one of those things where Yeah, all the Bateman stuff, you can get caught up in the negativity of it, but he makes a big clutch catch on that winning drive, or I guess not winning drive, but the go ahead drive there. Flowers obviously coming through in the clutch. What is your kind of bird's eye view on them?
I think Spenny said it pretty well, and I would use the phrase like I think just the ceiling has been raised on, or the floor has been raised on what wide receivers look like in Baltimore with this group. I just think Lamar Jackson has a little more trust in guys like Odell and Zay to throw the ball down the field. I think the Bateman production is just I don't want to get caught up in the negativity of today of like analyzing whether he made enough effort on a play or something like that. You just never know. I think his lack of production is a little bit concerning in terms of him being a factor moving forward. You just look at him game to game, and I think you would love to see a little bit more production with him, especially with Andrews out and there being some more targets to go around. But I think the Odell ascension is, the thing that is much more positive to talk about, obviously. Spenny made the comment about his couple adjustments. I just think he looks a little bit more like himself. We've talked about this over the last 3 or 4 weeks, and that's huge. And then Zay Flowers just continues to be fun. So I agree with what Spenny said. They just seems to be a little more ownership over the fact that it's like, all right, we're not really playing second fiddle to this running game. We're second fiddle to Mark Andrews. We're going to be playmakers. And they were. And Isaiah Likely, they are figuring out ways week to week to get him in the ball. Obviously, that was a total defensive breakdown, it seemed like, from the Rams on his touchdown.
The one thing I will pause you there, Taylor, too. I see a lot of people that were saying like Lamar was late to get to Likely on that or something. As if number one, it didn't end in a touchdown. Number two,
nobody within a country mile of it.
Yeah, who cares how late
he wasn't late. If you go rewatch that play, he wasn't. He could have got it there maybe a millisecond quicker. That was the one thing that drove me bonkers today. The ball got there as quickly as it could have. He looked it off, came back, and fucking hosed it. I don't know what else you want him to do. So don't go walking around. If you're watching this podcast, you go walking around like Lamar didn't throw 3 tutties, have a game-winning, game-driving, game drive.
Go ahead.
He hit him when he needed to. So don't you go walking around. Go watch that play again.
I want to
disrupt you, Taylor. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. No, I think like to finish off the point there just quickly on Zay Flowers, someone, another rookie could have gotten in their head over, the 2 semi drops he had. I mean, they were very much in like unscripted situations where maybe he didn't expect the ball. The Ravens haven't had a lot of receivers make the play he made on the final drive to come down with that catch. He is ascending as a playmaker in the offense, and it's clear that Lamar Jackson has a ton of trust for him. So that's huge. I mean, I think there was a lot of doom and gloom when Mark Andrews went out of where this passing game was going to go, and look at what Lamar Jackson did today with the guys around him. I mean, as you said, Spenny, like 3 tutties, over 300 yards, like it was all there. He did it all. So, and that's a lot on the receiving core.
Yeah, little feast or famine, I think, for sure. And, definitely relying on the big play. But when you hit on those big plays and they continue to try with them, which I think obviously that can burn you a little bit. You saw the interception. You saw some of the misses late, that second down in overtime where they just fired one to Beckham. That really kind of wound up costing them on that drive. It's tough, but you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And connecting on those 2 long ones, that was huge for that receiving core, and it was huge for Lamar Jackson, who really hasn't hit on many deep shots at all this season.
Well, that's the thing. Or even like last year. I mean, the entire complaint for a while has been, where are the big plays? Where is the throws over the top? Now they're finding them. So it's opening up that path. I know it's not like, oh my God, they relied on the big play, but everyone complains when those don't happen. So there they were. I think it's it's never bad to have the ability to make the big play. I'll make the biggest Captain Obvious statement of all time.
Yeah, I think Andrews going down, I mean, you don't want that to ever happen. It happened at a decent time for them where they could kind of go, play a couple games and then go into the bye, come out of it. It does feel like they're still kind of building the plane while it's getting off the ground a little bit. But when you're hitting on those deep shots, and that is a credit once again, and I'm going to keep coming back to this, of Eric DeCosta finally opening up the checkbook. And Spenny, you mentioned all the hand wringing about the cost for Beckham. Well, you know what? There was a little bit of a tax on a guy like that. And guess what? It's paying fucking dividends that you went out and invested in him. And then the people complaining about drafting tight ends in the 4th round when you already have Andrews. This is what happens. Sometimes guys get hurt. That's huge. And then continuing to just double down on it. Draft Zay Flowers. Bateman's still in the mix. I know he's had some tough moments, but like I said, clutch catch on that go-ahead drive. It was overall, I think, a very positive day for them. And I think they're going to be able to weather this storm without Andrews just fine. It's not always going to look pretty, but they scored 31 points today. So it's huge. I mean, that's absolutely massive. So I guess that's enough on that. I wanted to, we'll pick some nits with this one. Certainly there are some things to get into. Spenny, what do we think about the defense today? I think it was an interesting game for them. They got gashed on the ground on that first one, but my favorite thing, they bent, but they didn't break. A lot of bending, but not breaking today. They also broke a few times. Obviously they had the couple touchdowns there. The DeMarcus Robinson one was tough. The Cooper Kupp one, that's tough to defend. But overall, they tightened up when they needed to. Getting that stop in overtime, that got them the win there. And that was both sides of the ball coming in clutch. With the go-ahead touchdown there, then they held them out of the end zone, which was not a given the way that last drive in regulation started for the Rams. Then they stopped them in overtime after the Ravens went 3 and out, and that leads to the win. Overall thoughts on the defense, gentle spin.
All great points. And what stood out to me immediately, drive one, Rams, first time they touched the ball, running the ball, just like the Cardinals did between the B gaps. I think we're going to continue to see teams like the Rams, like the Cardinals have done, like has happened a couple of times, want to get on the linebackers quickly, have less of a priority. There are plays. There are, when you dial up Madden, there's inside zone, there's this, there's that. But you can prioritize certain objectives within a play. Like, don't worry about your double team. Don't worry about your B block, your combo. Get to the second level a little quicker. That's something you can't do in Madden. And we're seeing teams try to get on Roquan Smith, get on Patrick Queen, and the Rams did that. I was honestly disgusted that it took the Ravens and Mike Macdonald so long to get from, they were running a 4-man front. There were 4 down guys. They were having Kyle Hamilton walk into the box. They were playing a Madden type of 4-3, if you want to oversimplify it. That was allowing the Rams to dictate gaps. When you play that kind of 4-man front the way they were and not having guys be aggressive at the snap, it allows the other team to run the ball. That's why you play it. You want 7 back more so. So I was screaming in my seat for 2 drives, play a 3-man front, have 3 defensive linemen, a Michael Pierce, a Travis Jones, a Broderick Washington, a Justin Madubuike, a Brent Urban, inside the tackles. Then you have a man on a gapped up. You have outside linebackers. That's the more traditional Ravens defense that we've seen. The Rams drove the entire way down the field on their opening drive. They got into the goal to go. And then the Ravens decided to go into a 3-man front. The Rams immediately threw the ball. Incompletion. I think they got one wedged in there maybe. Field goal. So it was like, okay, the Rams are going to whoop your ass if you play 4-man fronts. They are going to be able to get on you. They have a little idea. That was their little nook. And we actually heard Nick Saban talk about this against Georgia. Georgia walks down the field against Alabama, scores a touchdown. And Saban just said, well, shit, boys, we can't play a 4-man front.
We're not going to. So quit asking.
And they stopped. And then the Ravens kind of stopped. But it did get to a point where it felt like they were running some kind of H cross, Y cross, Nakua over the middle, whatever. I thought the Rams did a really nice job. Sean McVay, Jake, you know how I feel about Sean McVay. Sean McVay did a really nice job mixing it up, some of those things, but it felt like McVay boiled Mike Macdonald down into what does he not want to do. And what I think Mike Macdonald doesn't want to do is what Wink Martindale loved to do. I think he doesn't want to go play man. He doesn't want to put his corners on an island. He doesn't want to blitz out of man. And eventually, Mike Macdonald got into blitzing a little bit, got into getting some pressure that way. A lot of the stuff that the Rams got to was not, we talked about this in the preview, it was not Stafford running around buying time. It was Stafford quickly going 1-2, high, low, high, low, high, low, if then. And that moved the ball for them. And then the Ravens started to mix in. I think Macdonald didn't. So many people are, I guarantee if you go listen to 105.7, they're going to have so many stupid fucking things to say about Macdonald. I guarantee they have to find something. I thought Macdonald did an incredible job being self-aware, mixing in man pressures, robber. And getting to, well, McVay is asking me to do this. Who do the Rams ultimately have? Tutu Atwell goes down. Hey, Cooper Kupp's a hell of an athlete. He gets the one catch, the other touchdown. Whatever. He can be their primary target. They have Nakua, who's a nice player. They don't have these studs. They don't have these 4-2 Tyreek Hill. They don't have some tight end that destroys you. So I think the Ravens are like, all right, well, if you want us to, then we will. Sometimes you've got to do what they're asking you to do. And I think that that's what McDonald did so well. The Rams, Matt Stafford, I thought, if I'm doing PFF grades, I watched it in person. I don't have the all 22 yet. If I'm doing PFF grades, I don't know how many times Stafford made a mistake. It might have been 6 out of like 50. Out of like 50, what did he drop back? 39 times maybe. I've got game book right here. He dropped back at least 40 times, I would guess. Matt Stafford, that's in the second half. I don't know. Terrible radio. But I don't think he made many mistakes. I think that's why he had 41 attempts, a couple sacks, probably scrambled once, so maybe 45. That's why McVay wanted him instead of Goff. That's why they made that big financial switch and decision, because Stafford isn't making mistakes. Pardon me, Marlon Humphrey, I will say, there's one thing I'm going to rip Marlon on. It's late in that game, maybe the Rams' final drive or so, did have a ball. It didn't touch between his fingers. It didn't touch in this area. It touched a rung above that he should have ripped away and made a fucking play and redeemed himself. Marlon Humphrey should have had an interception very late in that game.
One in the end zone, right? With Robinson.
Yes.
That would have ended the game, yeah.
It would have ended the game. And that was the play. He got beat on a double move, whatever. Everyone's going to talk about
that. By the way, that was Stafford's biggest mistake. Why he even threw that ball in the end zone was
Yeah, that drive, just to highlight it for Marlon, he falls down. I think it was Nakua on a 7 route to the left side. Marlon falls down. Nakua makes a nice chunk out of that. Then he kind of gets posterized by Kupp, and then the DeMarcus Robinson.
There was another play where Marlon had his back turned and kind of like breathed out, and Nakua's just running up behind his back. And it was like, turn around, brother.
Yeah, he's a work in progress right now for sure. So they're going to need him to be better. But
I will come back and say, had the ball right there.
Robinson did a nice job. I don't know if you saw the replay a ton, but Robinson did a really nice job playing defense on that, because he had that ball. It couldn't have been more in the breadbasket.
That's why he plays defense, because he should have taken that ball away. Marlon should have taken that ball away. And I guarantee, and our boy Jack, I guarantee Marlon is going to talk about that. Those will haunt your mind. If you're a DB and you have a ball between both of your hands and you don't end up with it, that will haunt you forever. So Marlon, go make that play.
Yeah, interesting day overall for the crew. I think we had Travis Jones get a sack. Matabike had at least one. I think it might have just been the one. Not a ton of pressure. Roquan Smith was very active, kind of running into the gaps and making plays behind the line of scrimmage. Had a really
Kyle Hamilton gets a knee injury early on, and then is kind of in and out.
Yeah, so he's getting an MRI tomorrow, but he was walking around still a good bit. So I'm guessing that's going to be a soft tissue, but I guess we'll see. We'll leave that to the real doctors, please, everyone. And then the one-arm man, I think he made a couple nice plays up in the air.
Pause. The unnecessary roughness. On him when he turned his face away. What you teach, I know this for a fact because I'm a member of USAF, USA Football, American Football Federation. What you teach as a coach and as a ref, if you are leading with your head, it means your eyes are down. That's what you penalize. Players are not supposed to put their eyes down. Marcus Williams turned his eyes away from the target, away from the player, and slid his back in like a box out. That's not a preferred technique necessarily because it jeopardizes you to be able to react. But that means that you can't commit a personal foul with your eyes turned away. That was unbelievable. Horrible call. I guarantee on TV they were talking about it. That was nuts.
Sherry in the comments here, that's why I said real doctors. Let's let them make that call. not pro football doc. That's
The
all.
rest of injuries we had Ronnie Stanley rotating in and out at one point. We had McCary in there. We had Falele. We had Morgan. All 4 tackles saw time in the first half, which I was at the game. I couldn't quite make sense of that, but it was
a platoon, dude. It was a fucking hockey shift they had with the tackles going on there today. I'm not totally sure. It might be a health thing. I know Stanley didn't take his typical Friday off, so I don't know. Maybe they're messing with combinations. I know Moses has been banged up. Pretty much everyone is at this point. McCary kind of always is. So it's just one of those things. But I mean, keeping it with the defense, Brian, any final thoughts on them?
I mean, they kind of went through the ringer today. I'll say that. It was good to see the way they bounced back. I mean, after the safety, the response to that, I think, was a huge one. That was a period of the game where it easily could have gotten away from them. They stepped up with a big stop. And then, the PI on Marlon was a joke, too. Like, that was one where we got off the field with a real statement 3 and out, and they took that away from us, and they responded with 3 more stops and got the punt anyways. I think that was massive. Obviously, didn't love the way they finished the game in regulation there, but I don't know. Like, the defense has been the hero a lot of times this season, and you can only ask them so many times. Like, eventually the offense needs to step up and make a play, and the offense did that, and special teams did that today. So it's nice to have a little bit of variety, right, in the way that you go out and win as a team. So not their best game, but I'm not hitting any panic buttons or anything. I mean, the Rams they're phenomenal. They're just a well-oiled machine over there. And Stafford, I mean, we've said it 100 times here. He's impressive as shit. He's just a professional quarterback. Like, a lot of quarterbacks that we've sent a lot of different pressures at this year, or even just created pressure from the inside, have really melted under the pressure. And he obviously had all the answers, especially that. I mean, the touchdown to Cup is example number 1 on that.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so I guess we can pick a little bit of nits now. I kind of want to start with John Harbaugh. This feels like maybe a third-tier storyline for me for this one. A lot of talk about bailed out, a lot of complaining on Twitter throughout the game. Spending, I don't know how much you were tracking it there, but kind of your typical, like, John Harbaugh making stupid decisions, and there certainly were some. I think the one that I want to highlight is the Demarcus Robinson touchdown that he challenges. Yeah, pretty inexplicable, I guess. Like, you can't challenge that. I think, that's pretty 100 level stuff. And I even called this out in the moment, not to pat myself on the back, but like, I called it like they were just trying to call timeout there. That's really all that was. They wanted to get themselves lined up correctly for that 2-point conversion. They wind up defending it. But overall, like, I think some of the John Harbaugh stuff, and we talked about him, Spenny, so we'll start with you before we get going here. And the floor that he provides and the foundation and everything, not his best day, but definitely I think the narrative around him is a little overblown at this point, at least based upon some of the reaction I was seeing today.
Somebody behind me, shout out Bruce, said,
Bruce,
John Harbaugh is a good wife. He was like, anything you need supportive wise, it's there. Anything you need from a partner, it's there. It's clean. It's ready to go. Works hard. Everything you need is there for you. And I appreciated that part. In terms of that particular decision, I will give myself beaucoup points. I think that was the right decision. And my immediate reaction was, if you challenge it, number 1, you can't bring your challenges with you. So we love to use our challenges before it gets into 2 minute. Number 2, that triggers a response to New York, which takes more time. So that's like getting not a 30-second timeout or whatever they decide it is. That is a long timeout. They have to go review it. It has to kick to New York. That has to come back. They have to review the clock, all of those things. So I thought a use of a challenge was a timeout, and I thought that was smart. If we're going to call a timeout, let's make it a challenge. Let's talk. If we need collaboration, let's collaborate there.
And I think he did say after the fact that he thought he stepped out before, so it should have been illegal touching, I think was his idea there. But either way, you can't.
I think that's BS. I think that was why he challenged and, was able to go trigger the response that took longer. So I think that was smart, but I don't think there was ever any doubt that Demarcus Robinson scored that touchdown. So that was in the heat of things. It's, do you spend a timeout at that point? I think was a decision. And sometimes, we love process, but sometimes results speak louder. And the result was that they got a stop after. So that was more important, getting a stop probably than a timeout was to them. So I liked that it kicked that whole thing around and back. And it was a weird game in many ways. There was a lot of penalties that were not on the Los Angeles Rams. We'll put it that way.
What I do want to highlight, because that was the one that people were freaking out about, and what would have been, I think, the smooth brain of the week if things had gone differently, was right before that, when you're in 4th and inches, and we're going to go to our number one Stern fan down there in the bottom left corner.
That was crazy. Why
did they not go for that, Brian?
I don't have an answer for that. I just don't. I wish they would, but it seems like some of that, and we talked about this before the bye. Like I want them to look themselves in the mirror and figure out some of their processes on how they make decisions in game. Fire up the old Mad machine, put it on simulate, and maybe just run as a GM. I don't know, like figure something out. And in that moment, it looked like, wow, they really are just still broken on that front. Now, this is where it's like, was this truly John Harbaugh's intent? Was he truly just trying to get a timeout plus? We'll call it a timeout plus, as Spenny kind of described it. You could just create mass confusion, and then you kind of get your timeout as well.
Nobody knows what medium rare plus is, but when you order it hits. Everyone
timeout plus.
This guy's.
So he's mouthing like he stepped out to the referee. Is that him just selling the act? Is that Jason Kidd with the water cup being like, hey, bump into me? Like, is he just trying to really sell the idea that he was actually trying to challenge that? Or did he just come up with the best reasoning and the best excuse in the post game as to why he made what initially looked like a boneheaded error?
Let's be honest here. There was no possible shot. We've never seen him challenge something that was close to that. Like,
yeah.
That was clearly a touchdown. And additionally, it was automatically reviewed. So it doesn't make sense to challenge because it's automatically reviewed. But it does, by throwing the red flag, I think that triggers more.
He's had galaxy brain things with
Brian. Give it to me.
Yeah, go.
That was a launch. Well, let's just put that.
It was
out
a launch.
There. Yeah, it was a launch.
I mean, that was like that was he sent that one into
past the numbers. That was past the numbers.
So,
but I feel like that's part of it too. It's like
what's crazy about that to me is why are the refs not just speaking of processes, not processing that it's already been reviewed? Why is it triggering anything in New York? Like that makes absolutely like the NFL probably should figure that out.
Dude, it was
so should have been like, here's your flag, buddy. This actually already was
on the throw, Spenny. Like you weren't watching on TV. It was so funny because they had the zoomed out like end zone, the typical end zone view, and you just see a red flag just coming from the bottom of the screen. You don't see Harbaugh. You see the flag fly in, and it just like slowly arcs.
It also confused the hell out of the Fox production people because there was they signaled a flag on the play, which came up on the graphic, and then it said DeMarcus Robinson touchdown as they were like lining up for the 2-point right before the thing got launched. The entire thing was so bizarre.
Was there a penalty on that, or did they pick it up, or what? I never got an explanation on that. What do you think of your guy Moose today, and he takes on the other team?
It's fine. Joe Davis is very good at baseball. I think he's like not as good at football. I think he's good though. I think Moose is fine. I mean, Moose is fine. Moose. I mean, it's a fine NFL Sunday broadcasting crew. I have no issue.
I love to hear that. In my opinion, as not hearing it, I assume it was actually like, to me, after hearing your opinion, Taylor, I was like, oh, I probably would have enjoyed that a lot then. If you said it was fine, that means I probably.
I thought it was fine. Everyone was. There was some
standards are so high. I mean,
some conjecture about that they were all over the Rams, but I mean that just happens every single time. I don't really know.
The Rams are also a flashy little recent Super Bowl winner and whatever.
Yeah, everybody loves McVay. I mean, I sort of get it.
Spenny loves McVay.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought to answer your question, Jake, I thought it was a very fine, except for Pam Oliver, who they brought her to a report about Kyle Hamilton. The team had announced that he was out 20 minutes before her report, where she said it looked like he was probably out, which is confusing to me because you would have assumed she would have gotten from PR that he was out. That was very confusing.
Also, I didn't really understand that. She or their team might have it might have been that or something else. She was just totally unprepared for one point. They went to her and she was like, Well,
I think she was getting the information as she was talking because you could
I think-
kind of
yeah.
hear someone say it to her as she was talking. The
She was
second
trying
one
to-
was more because
she
on
was
Twitter,
trying to-
the Ravens tweeted Kyle Hamilton's out.
Yeah,
And then
she was trying to like filibuster. She was like, "Well, I'm waiting to hear," and
that was
bizarre.
weird. That was weird. And she does a great job. It's been around forever. But both of those were the two most bizarre parts of the broadcast for me.
Where do you come down on this John Harbaugh stuff? I feel like we haven't gotten many John Harbaugh takes out of you this year.
For me,
Yeah.
I'll take him by his word on the challenge. I'm fine with that. If that's what he says, I'll take him at an honorable Catholic John Harbaugh's word there.
A man of the hall.
Spenny, you're outnumbered 3-1, and really 4-1.
I think that ultimately, I mean, this is going to be the most simpleton take of all time. So come at me if you want a more expansive take. We're 10-3, and he has two of the best units in the league. I don't really know what else you want. I mean, yes, are there some game managing things that are weird? But if you watch the NFL week to week, every coach does something weird in game management, if not worse normally than what John Harbaugh does.
That finger Jake's pointing up there is mighty strong.
By the way, the body language stuff that we've talked about, he might have fully redeemed himself today with that camera zooming in on him.
Yes.
I mean,
did he
just kind of like boom?
Oh, yeah.
When he was just yelling into the camera, they got the slow-mo of it. That was one of my favorite shots of the year.
And the only thing I'll say about, so that's my overall John Harbaugh take, is at this point in this season, the Ravens are one of the best teams in football. And, you look around the league and like you watch the Bills and the Chiefs, and there's nothing about the Chiefs that makes you think that they're tremendously better coached than the Ravens are right now. Mr. Mahomes.
Are the Ravens the second team to 10 wins?
Yes.
I think so, yeah. Eagles, yeah, other one. But yeah, I mean, and you talk about the Bills.
And I just want to talk about the punt real quick, or the non-go for it on fourth down in the fourth quarter. I didn't have a huge problem with that. I get that, like, you would love for them to go just win the game there, but leading into that, let me bring it up. Hold on. Sorry. Talk about bad radio. In the second half.
Taylor, I can't express how badly I want this. I'm so excited for you to
three plays. Here's the Rams drive. 3 plays, 4 yards, punt. 5 plays, 18 yards, punt. 6 plays, 28 yards, punt. 3 plays, 2 yards, punt.
Yeah.
Before the Ravens punted.
The six play one was actually 2 3-and-outs and 1 though.
Yeah.
By the way.
So it's just like
6 and out.
I don't making them drive down, giving it back in the hands of your defense that had clearly found something in the second half didn't totally bother me, as opposed to giving them the ball in a great spot if you don't make it on 4th and 1, and they have the ability to kick the field goal to go ahead late.
Stouts had a great season too, so I get that. I mean, they play the field position.
So but I would have had no problem if they'd gone forward as well. But I also didn't have a problem with the punt.
It segues well to me for another conversation that I want to have, another nitpick, and really maybe even more than a nitpick. These run pass splits, I don't have them in front of me, but it feels very pass heavy with Todd Monken. Spenny, what do you got on that?
I think that the Ravens do a nice job. I don't think it's as much Monken. I believe there are run calls for every play very thoroughly. Not always. I think there might be run calls where there aren't a pass play a lot more, which is just commonplace. Motion, numbers, things. You want to call a run play for a reason. But I think the Ravens did a nice job recognizing that the Rams were walking at 1.67 guys up, like we've talked about 1,000 times, walking 7 guys up to the line of scrimmage, blitzing, trying to get pressure. I couldn't quite see all the way live. That's one area where you always fall short. Lamar Jackson had some pretty clean pockets, especially considering there were so many guys walked up. I think Monken did a nice job spreading the living F out of the field. There were 2x2s. There were 3x1s where it was wide. And I don't think it worked at first, but I think it made the Rams respect the width of the field, which is something that you might get angry at the result of an individual play. And you'll say, oh, I wish they would have done this. I wish they would have done that. But it triggers a respect of width. Or if you bunch everything in and you run downhill, it's like, uh-oh, they almost broke that one. Kyron Williams. Rams went in super tight. Their splits, at one point I saw heels were behind each other, almost like a special teams play late in that game. Kyron Williams almost busts a long one. Geno Stone, I think, taps his heels out. But I think they did a nice job going wide, condensing, a lot of variable width of the field. The run got away from them. there was a point where the Ravens, I mean, defense was on the field. It goes Lamar Jackson, touchdown to Odell Beckham. The Rams get the ball back. They have 3 plays. There's a defensive offsides on the punt, which gives them a first down. They go score a touchdown. The Ravens then get a false start on 1st and 10. It's 1st and 15. Lamar Jackson throws an interception, and immediately the Rams have the ball back. So there was a stretch from, I think, 7:20 left in the game when that penalty occurred, that in the second quarter, that the Ravens don't get the ball back until 1:45 left. So whatever you want to talk about scheme-wise, human beings get tired when they have to run and hit and push and throw. So I think that Monken did a nice job making sure that Lamar had enough options. If you call a wide pass play, he can check into something if need be. So those are the layers that we're looking to expand on. I'll always defer to Peyton Manning's comments recently. Offensive coordinators to franchise quarterbacks are professional recommenders. They make a recommendation on what you should do. If you've had 5+ years, you make a lot more money than they do. You know what you're capable of. At the end of the day, it's in your hands to make sure that you check in or out or protection into the right thing. And I just don't want to leave this podcast episode, as I'll pass it off, without saying how badass Lamar Jackson was today. Without saying, I think that, we've talked about a lot of things, but broke tackles, made plays with his legs, hit guys downfield, and then threw a memorable 3rd and 17 nuke laser beam to Zay Flowers. Freaking laser beams, freaking sharks.
Freaking sharks, a freaking laser beam shooting out of their feet.
That touchdown was badass. If you go back and just watch it again, just go watch the highlight. That football looks big, and it is moving so fast and so confidently out of his hand. It was like a Felix Bautista freaking sinker with a 2-2 count, knowing you're going to strike that mofo out. It was sick to watch in person. It was sick, even better to watch on video. That was what I've enjoyed watching more. So don't walk away from this game without giving Lamar Jackson his flowers after throwing that freaking strike to Zay Flowers.
To his flowers. Yeah, no, I agree. That's got to be the takeaway, just like Tylan Wallace. And we can kind of, wrap things up here.
Jake, real quick, you're always the one setting the table, so I'm going to use this comment to set the table for you. What's your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems to me like, and
for the listeners, Keaton Mitchell versus Gus Edwards for the podcast listeners.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've long thought this way, that Gus Edwards is like the perfect closer, and they've used him that way in certain spots the last couple of years perfectly. Like in that Pittsburgh game where Jackson is hurt, Tyler Huntley gets hurt, Anthony Brown comes in. They just leaned on Gus Edwards and they rode him into the ground. And they kind of did that in the Chargers game this year. They've done that in other games. I just want to see them get active in the run game, and they've got the perfect guy for it now in Mitchell to carry you through quarters, let's say 2 through 3. You don't have to lean on him early, but get him going and then ride his leg. I mean, like, he is looking like a professional running back. Spenny, we had some concerns about his abilities to run through the tackle. Those are totally eviscerated for me. This guy is good. And like,
he had one early in that game where he just shot through the smallest little gap and got a first down.
He's a complete running back, 100%. You're totally right. And if you have some qualms about, his lack of experience, I totally get that. And you don't want to ride him into the ground. You want to keep those fresh legs, but eventually you got to get to a point where you start doing that. And I was getting a little frustrated with the pass run splits today. I even tweeted on that go ahead drive, and I wound up with some egg on my face. Todd, what are you doing? It's a 4-minute offense right now. Let's kill some of this clock so their offense isn't going to have a chance. Pass. And to Lamar Jackson.
Todd.
Snap the ball with 25 still on the play.
Lamar Jackson, coming out of Louisville, great arm, tremendous athleticism. But yeah, I was just getting a little frustrated because it's like, man, we got to have a little bit more situational awareness here to burn some of this clock. And overall, like I said, I ate some crow because they turned into a touchdown. But I just want to see a little bit more. Give me some Keaton Mitchell quarters 2 through 3. Lamar Jackson, run it a little bit more. I want to see a little bit more of that. He wasn't doing that enough early. He felt a little tentative in that regard. Let's start to cut it loose, and then let's lean on Gus in that fourth quarter, because he's got some fresh legs now, and he looks good to me as well when he does get action. But it just feels
Can
like
you repeat that for me? I want you to say it slow. What do we like around here? Gus has some what? Some fresh legs.
Yeah,
We like fresh legs, baby. We like fresh legs.
I do like fresh. I mean, this is going all the way back to 2020 with J.K. Dobbins. People freaking out about them not using him in the first quarter of that season. Fresh legs. You want to keep him fresh. And then what did they do? They rode J.K. Dobbins into the ground to the playoffs that year in 2020. Let's do that. Let's use those fresh legs. You've got some with Gus. You've got some with Mitchell. You've got some with Jackson, arguably. He hasn't run as much as he has in years prior. Let's start to do a little bit more of that. I want to see some of that in Jacksonville next week. I just left you all stunned.
That turns me on. You just left us all speechless.
I'm just thinking about fresh legs.
Yeah, exactly. These legs are just so fresh and just.
By the way, I would like to say that I saw a video of a new way to crack Maryland crabs. This is dead serious, and it blew my mind. You take the crab, you split it in half down the center, like the middle line.
Yeah.
Split the body, and then you take the knuckles, and you just gently pop them. If you don't break it away, but if you just crack it a little bit,
you get that
it leaves the legs.
Yeah.
It leaves the legs. So there is a new way for all our Marylanders, all our crab folks, all our Exit 52 brethren. I'll try and post it on Twitter or something. There's a new way because we love fresh legs and we want some fresh legs. And Jake, I think we have fresh legs to look forward to.
That's what I'm saying. They've got the horses right now. The horses have been just trotting around out in the gantry there, out in the corral. They're ready to rock. They're ready to
gantry is a word you've never used in this podcast.
Warming up in the back, the horses have been.
Yeah, they're ready to go out they're ready to go out to stud. They've got the horses in the back. Let's let them out and let's let them run wild. Let's go crazy horse. Let's go Assateague Island. Just fucking, running out through the wilderness. Brian, I know you're a run the ball guy. Back me up here.
I'm a what? Oh, run the ball guy? Yeah, shove. Dude, let's just get back to shoving.
Yeah.
Nothing like a good Gus Edwards shove. It just wasn't contextually in the football game as much this week as it has been other weeks.
This was a quarterback duel. This was a quarterback duel. These two guys.
Yes, it was.
That's what happened.
It was a quarterback duel.
That's what happens. They ran it actually a little bit early, but then Stafford started to sling it around, and it's like fighting with Dark Link. It's like he starts doing everything, and then you want to copy all his moves, and it's like, oh shit, I got to use fire. Like, what am I doing here? So yeah, it's just like I think a little bit of an invasion of the body snackers there a little bit, but I don't know. And it worked out well today, like I said, so I'm totally fine. And the fact that they can throw the ball in clutch situations, we've wanted that, and we saw it today, and you're going to need to do more of that going forward. But yeah, sprinkle a little bit of those fresh legs in there. You got them now.
That's why that 3rd and 17 was so sick because it felt like the Rams almost had the Ravens a couple times in those make him throw it situations, make him throw it. And then he just ripped the jugular right out and then did it again in overtime. And
well, who knows what would happen if that punt return didn't happen? He really got bailed out there because then he would have had to throw.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
That's how we should end it. That's such a good take. Yep. God, that's a good take, Jake. That's why you get the big bucks. I mean, exactly. That is without Tylan Wallace, does Lamar Jackson win the game? No. I mean, that's just a true statement.
that is sipping the haterade, and I gotta respect it. All right, I guess we're all taked out here. We're running over an hour. Spenny, I know
I'll give my one last take, and then you guys, because it's a broadcast take, so I'll just get it out before you guys actually talk about football.
Do it.
Joe Davis's call on the last play was very, very good. That's the only one other thing I wanted to say.
What did you like about it?
Just kind of like breaks away, like stays on his feet.
He called it. He captured it.
And I love there's no flags and then just lay out. I love that. Just hit a no flags, lay out. Thank you, Joe. Good big moment caller. He's a good big moment caller. Got a
very Nance-esque flourish of him there. Just the no flag and just let it ride. Very good.
Let it ride. You got to lay out in that spot. It's good announcing.
Hey, if you're listening to this right now, there's 125 of you. Go click like. Go click subscribe. I am wasted and barely got that out of my mouth. Go click those buttons. Help us out. We love you guys. We hope that you love us too. Help the boys bring you the best content by subscribing, by liking, sharing this podcast with a friend. We appreciate you. We would love if you appreciated us so we can keep having fun. Brian's hat, I also don't want to get out of here without saying,
oh my fucking
black
God.
on white is dirty, filthy, sick. That looks great.
Well, I got news for you boys.
Oh boy.
I got hats for the whole gang.
Man, I
The
gotta
whole squad.
make trip down your threes neck of the woods and collect on some
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
I got a lot of backlog piling up there in Spenny's house and now your house.
Let's go to Delia's this like Thursday or Friday, Jake.
Okay. Yeah, listen, I'd love to. I'd love to come out and hang out with the City Boys. It's the City Boy Wednesday.
Fellowship of the Wings.
Oh yeah. Okay. Is that all we got? We all done?
That's all we
Shout
got.
out to Eric, who's not on the show, but was at the tailgate today and seemingly made his dreams come true with DJ Pauly D. Unbelievable scenes we got out of him. So
gave Alex, his brother, the jersey right off his
jersey,
back,
which was very cool. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. Shout out to Jimmy Seafood, as always, a great presenting sponsor of ours. Put on a great show today out at the tailgate, as Spenny is just probably going to hurl right now. So, yeah, I mean, great to do that right in the middle of the ad, right? But yeah, Jimmy's, as always, does a fantastic job with the tailgates. I think that might have been their last one of the year, but it's always a good time. So stay tuned to what they got going on. Shout out, as always, to Black Eyed Susan Spices. Shout out, of course, to Fed Thrill. Shout out to everyone that's got stuff going on with us, Smooth AF Products, whatever else it might be. We thank you all for your support. We thank you, listeners, for your unending support as well. Like Spenny said, go ahead, shoot us a little subscribe, a little comment there in the comments section. Get the algorithm pumping, get these things going out. Tell a friend. Word of mouth is great as well. Follow us on social media. You can find me at Jake Luke. That is LOUQUE. Brian is at Barstool Banks. Taylor at Taylor Smythe 10. Spenny is at Ravens 4 Dummies. That is the number 4 in the middle. Eric at EDITTI 22. And we're Exit 52 Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. So check all that out. We'll be back in a couple days with the jumbo set. I'm sure we're going to have some more stuff to talk about beyond that as well. A lot of stuff going with the Orioles right now. We did a nice little breakdown on this potential sale that could hopefully be in the works from John Angelos to one David Rubenstein. There's a full deep dive podcast you can go back and listen to if you have any interest in that. And yeah, like Spenny said, content is just humming right now as we approach the Christmas season for all who celebrate. So here was a first good early gift here on the first day of Christmas. Tylan Wallace gave to me a walk-off punt return touchdown. Thanks as always, guys. Ravens are 10-3, time's good, and we will talk to you again very soon.
See ya.
Arrivederci.